Summer 1988. Minnesota was baking under a sweltering sun. Crops were dying. The Mississippi River was drying up. It would be the hottest summer ever in the Twin Cities, and weather records melted away like ice cubes. By the end of June, there had already been 13 days with highs in the 90s. And 2 women had been murdered, the victims of brutal attacks in downtown Minneapolis parking ramps. The killers of Mary Foley and Carrie Coonrod were eventually arrested, but not before the long, hot summer of 1988 became the summer you couldn't feel safe inside a parking ramp. The fear wasn't confined to the downtown areas. It spread to the suburbs as well. And in the city of Edina, population 45,000, that fear became fact. In August, a woman was attacked as she was getting out of her car in a municipal ramp.
I felt like I was going to be the next rape and murder victim. I was petrified. I started screaming right away. I thought he was going to kill me anyway. Why not try to fight back? And it was the only thing I could do. I guess I'm more brave than I thought I was.
The attacker left the ramp in a maroon 2-door Chevy coupe, but not before the victim and a witness had time to note the license number. 4 days later, an arrest warrant was issued for the driver of the Chevy. A $1,500 reward was offered for information leading to an arrest in the case.
The attack occurred in the ramp just behind this fashionable shop.
Local news station, WCCO Television, gave the story extensive coverage in its afternoon and evening newscasts on August the 18th.
First, all of a sudden the door opened on the driver's side and somebody put his hands around the back of her neck.
The suspect in the attack was arrested the next day, thanks to a tip from an informant who had seen the TV report. The reward was paid. The case was closed. Hello, I'm Rod Grams of KMSP Television. Sometimes it takes more than just good police work to solve a crime. It takes information. Information that often comes at a price. The turning point in the Edina ramp attack came with the offer of a reward. That reward sponsored by an organization called the Edina Crime and Criminal Apprehension Fund. This is the story of that crime prevention fund and how it has forever changed the face of law enforcement in Edina and hundreds of other cities. Above all, it's a story of community action and a vivid picture of how police and people can work together to fight crime. It was 1969, and the crime rate was edging upward. The frustration felt by Edina residents and their police department peaked that spring when a local man was beaten to death by a pair of burglars. Despite an intense investigation, police hit a dead end. They would need more information if they were to solve the crime. Yet in 1969, it was against the law for them to trade cold cash for hot tips.
The department's hands were tied, possibly, because they didn't have the ability to bring everything possible to bear for the solution of crime. And what I mean by that is that they didn't have that extra tool, that being the money available in a crime fund to either purchase information or offer rewards.
But those restrictions did not apply to private groups. So a local civic organization launched an effort to start a private fund for the purpose of offering rewards to informants. The fund would work closely with the police department and its chief, yet it would operate under the control of its own board of directors. Other civic organizations were called upon for support, financial and otherwise, and a fundraising drive among Edina residents followed. With a healthy financial base to work from, the Edina Crime Prevention Fund was officially incorporated in December of 1970. The fund was the first of its kind in the state of Minnesota. Eventually, it was granted nonprofit status. That kept it from having to pay federal income tax and made contributions to the fund tax deductible. Has the Crime Fund been a success? After 20 years, the answer is a resounding yes. Money paid to informants pays off. Incentives from the fund have been directly responsible for solving more than 1,000 cases, ranging from vandalism to bombings to homicide. That's dozens of crimes each year that might otherwise have gone unsolved. And there's evidence that the very existence of a crime fund helps keep crooks out of the community. The Crime Fund was established to serve the community of Edina, but in reality, it reaches much deeper than that. The fund works closely with other law enforcement agencies. In fact, a typical informant operation may stretch across several cities, even counties. Nothing illustrates this spirit of cooperation better than the story of a kidnapping that eventually laid a trail to murder. It began at 11 p.m. in a near-deserted parking lot of an Edina grocery store. A 16-year-old employee was just getting off work. He noted a couple of people sneaking around the cars on the other side of the parking lot. Pranksters, he thought, just letting the air out of people's tires. But what he didn't know was that the pranksters were actually masked gunmen, and they had been waiting for someone like him to come along.
Keys! Get back there! Go on! Yeah! Come here! Come on! Get in! Get in there! Go, go! Shut up! I got some money here. If you want money, just let me out. Just drop me off here. Pull over. You can have the car. Just let me go. Shut up, man, and you won't get hurt. We killed before and we'll kill again. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
The boy was eventually bound and gagged and left alongside an office building in Bloomington, an adjoining suburb. Later that night, the gunmen, still driving the boy's car, were stopped by a Bloomington squad car on a routine traffic violation, a chance encounter that nearly proved fatal.
Sir 411, stopping Nora Victor 645, Old Shotgun Armadale.
Copy, Nora Victor 645, Old Shakopee, Normandale 1557.
By the occupants of that vehicle, we're in pursuit, now going northbound on Normandale. Northbound on Normandale.
1033 traffic only, in pursuit, northbound Normandale from Old Shakopee Road.
A high-speed chase ensued, and more shots were fired. The windshield of the squad car was shattered, and the officer was injured.
When I initially realized that I was bleeding, there's so much going on. I don't know that I had different thoughts about them other than simply I wanted to catch them. And I think there wasn't any distinction made as to whether they were kids or adults. They simply now became, in essence, an object that had to be caught. And you know, we were going to do whatever was necessary in order to catch them that night.
The kidnappers made good their getaway by ditching their car and then fleeing to a wooded area. The Edina Crime Fund posted a $5,000 reward for information in the case. Crime Stoppers, another organization which supports law enforcement by paying informants for tips, offered to help. It broadcast details of the kidnapping over numerous television and radio stations. And the call police had been waiting for came the very next morning.
10 days after the initial airing of that program, I received information from an unknown informant at the time that he had the identity of the perpetrators of the kidnapping and the ag assault upon the police officer, at which point I gathered as much information as I could from him at the time and called Detective Don Enger from the Edina Police Department. Turned all that information over to him and was able to receive the informant's permission to give Detective Enger his name and phone number, at which point the two people then talked about exactly what happened as far as that crime was concerned. What we further discovered through the use of this informant is that two homicides that occurred in Benton County, a county north of the Twin City area, were solved through this. An elderly couple had been gunned down basically in their front yard as they had gone to their car that morning.
We did go with Crime Stoppers on it, and Mr. Steve Golden arranged for us to meet that individual. So myself and a couple detectives from Bloomington did meet with the person, and we established an initial relationship with him, and we also established an understanding of what his level of cooperation would be and what our response to that cooperation would be in exchange for money that we would subsequently supply from the crime fund.
What gave us the big break in solving these different cases was the fact that we had someone who was willing to come forward and not only provide us with information, but who was willing to what we call being wired for sound, and going in and talking to these people and getting their conversations on tape. And they provided investigators with details that no one else would know but the person that committed the crimes.
A joint investigation was undertaken by Benton County, nearby Sherburne County, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and the Bloomington and Edina Police Departments. After 4 days of extensive surveillance and undercover work, investigators moved in on the suspects. 4 people were arrested. All were juveniles, and all eventually pleaded guilty to murder and kidnapping. It was a case that may have never been solved without the support of a crime prevention fund.
I think the key that really started to break things open was the fact that there'd been a reward offered for information leading to the arrest and the conviction of the people involved in the Edina kidnapping and our shooting.
The money that was given by the Edina Crime Prevention Fund was the primary motivation for this individual. I would say 85 to 90% of the reason this crime was solved was the fact that there was money there for this person.
So a crime prevention fund fulfills a real need in the community. Sure, it helps solve crime, but it also helps bring the community together. Residents who contribute to the fund can see their dollars at work, and those contributions become much more than just financial transactions. They leave behind a feeling that residents don't need to be the helpless victims of a crime. They can take a stand. A successful crime prevention fund is a grassroots effort. In Edina, remember, the first seeds of the crime fund were sown by civic organizations, not the police department. And the active participation by more than a dozen civic groups on the board of directors has kept the crime fund a vital, important tool.
The crime fund is so important for Edina as a whole. It spreads through Edina, and people know that while the fund is functioning, that there is a way that people can help if they know about a crime, if they see something suspicious happening. And people in Edina who may be intent on a crime, if they know that this type of a fund exists, they know that the chance of there being reported by someone or something suspicious being reported is very important. And so our group feels that it's very important to sponsor that situation.
You've seen how a crime prevention fund makes the job of investigating crime a lot easier. The Edina Crime Fund, however, has evolved a great deal in the last 2 decades, taking on a role in the community that goes past offering rewards and paying informants. It truly is a resource, one that works for the community which created it.
Our Edina Crime Prevention Fund not only provides reward monies and so forth, but also it underwrites other valuable crime prevention programs, such as Operation Identification. Secondly, we sponsor or underwrite the video programming. We do productions such as this one, and we sponsor, in part, a crime prevention officer that is out in the community actively practicing crime prevention.
When our community started this fund, we were #1 in the United States, really, as far as I know. We have been very cooperative with other communities and law enforcement agencies that have wanted to establish funds. We've given them our support, our information, our experience. And as an end result, we have today literally dozens of communities in the metropolitan area that have their own crime prevention and criminal apprehension funds.
I think the future of crime prevention in Bloomington is very sunny. You know, we have an organization that contains some very dedicated people, not just the officers, but the citizens that are involved. We have a tremendous amount of time, volunteer time, put in by these people to keep the bingo going, to stuff envelopes, and to do all the time-consuming, dirty work that needs to be done. And I think that we've grown over the years, and frankly, I think we're going to continue to grow and get even better. And I would hope that our experience is something that will carry over to other cities and into other states, because the benefits of the crime prevention are there.
If your community is intrigued with the possibilities offered by a crime prevention fund, well, there's no need to start from scratch. Work with an established fund. The Edina Crime Fund and many others like it are dedicated to helping other cities create similar funds. Support can range from simple advice to actual cash needed to get your fund off the ground. By itself, a crime prevention fund is not sufficient for attacking the problems of crime, but combined with the resources of a modern police department, it becomes a strong tool for law enforcement. Not only that, it allows and encourages citizens to help fight crime. An active crime prevention fund makes the city safer and leaves residents feeling their city is a better place to live. And in the end, that's what crime prevention is all about.